Welcome to the For the Love of the Game podcast with your hosts, Jefferson Belfort and Brian Hernandez. This is episode 22. Brian, how
Yeah.
are you doing today?
Man, doing good. Another week, another week. A lot of pretty exciting things happening, at least for like the Knicks. Well, not really exciting, but stuff happening with the Knicks that we're going to talk about later. And like for the rest of the NBA, now we're at that final stretch, and we're really going to see how these playoff seedings are going to turn out. And I'm really excited. And yeah, it's been nice. How about you, Jeff? How you doing?
Yeah, it's officially playoff push time. Most teams have around 20 games left. So this is like the fine tuning time of the season. Yesterday was able to see the Nets and the Bucks game, a very, very good game on both sides of the ball, for both teams as well. But it was a nail biter, and luckily the Nets got that win. Happy to see Kyrie come back after 2 weeks off and put up 38 last night. Just goes to show the greatness that he has within him.
Crazy, crazy. Kyrie, and especially like, well, him potentially coming back for home games and everything. Especially the perfect timing for playoff time. It's exciting time to be a Nets fan.
Agreed. So the topics we have lined up for today are, just continuing with what we started last week is starting with pretenders and contenders headed from the West this episode, and then talking about the biggest threat out west. Then we'll go over the Philadelphia's title window and how long do we really think it is. Kemba Walker is going to remain out for the rest of the season. What does that mean for Kemba? What does that mean for the Knicks? And then Zion Williamson, the ever going saga. We've moved away from Ben Simmons and now have wholeheartedly taken in the Zion situation. Are you ready, Brian?
Let's get into it.
Okay, perfect. Like we did last week, we rounded out the 1 through 8 seeds of teams, and we determined who we believed were pretenders and contenders of each conference. We'll be doing that again now with the Western Conference. And to start it off, we're going to start off with the piping hot Suns. They've lost the game recently, but I believe there are 20 of their last 22 that they've played since the new year. Right.
Crazy.
Are they a pretender? Are they a contender?
Yeah, it's like you said, this is too easy. This one's a clear contender. Man, the Suns are next level. We saw them do it last year. And last year, some people might have thought it was a little fluke that they even got to the finals and all that. And they came back this year with the vengeance and just said, that is not a mistake. That was not a fluke. They've only lost 11 games this entire season. That is insane. This team is doing something pretty special. And it's crazy how you don't really hear too much about the Suns. You don't hear media talking too much about the Suns. You don't hear about you hear about the Nets, you hear about Philly, you hear about Golden State, you hear about all these other teams, but the best team right now is clearly Phoenix, and it's at least best regular season team. And it's scary. They another year under their belt. Like last year, they were a little bit green. A lot of their guys were younger, but they kept their core. Another year in, and it's scary. What do you think?
They're completely outstanding. They're more than a contender.
Yeah.
They they very well could be the ones that are lifting up the trophy at the end of the season. Just rattling off some stuff that pops out at you when you look at their team or you think about like their record is they are conference best 29-8 in the West. And we've always talked about how great the West is. Obviously, there's been a little bit of a drop down out West, but there's still a stout amount of teams that are just amazing, right? Like what separates the sixth from the seventh is around 3.5 games,
Mhm.
and you know that's still a good conference, that's still a good conference. And then another thing that's glaring is they have the home record of 26-6, which is amazing, right? Who would think that they would have an even more impressive record in them, being the league's best team from away, being 23-5. You know, the team has showed that they need to be in that conversation. They don't get the respect, which is very, very weird to me.
Mhm.
They deserve all of that respect. I think that it was crazy last year to have not one of them being in consideration for MVP. I think it's quite crazy to think that again this season. I know it's a team ball on the Suns, but you don't have a 6 game lead past the next contender in your league without having someone that is should be in consideration for MVP in my mind.
Yeah, it's this one's way too easy. Like it's they're just so much they're doing so much better than everyone else right now. And like the other top performing teams, like they're just so much higher than them, and it's really surprising. Phoenix definitely put some respect on their name. Yeah, that's this one's too easy. I don't think we have to spend too much time here already. Any more time.
Exactly. So the next team on this list is the Golden State Warriors, sitting in the second seed right now. Like I said, 6 games behind the Suns, and their record of 43-17. Are they a pretender or a contender to you, Brian?
So, another easy one. Another easy one. It's gonna get more spicy coming soon. But for the Golden State Warriors, easy contenders. I said it in the beginning of the season. I think the Warriors are going to win the championship. Or they're gonna get to the finals. I think that's what I said. And uh we're seeing it now where they're also just right at the top and you know behind the Suns still, but they just got Clay back. They're looking really good right now. As well, you have that experience. So last episode we talked about for the Eastern Conference, some things that made us sway from teams to say that they're pretenders and contenders and all that was playoff experience. The Golden State Warriors, there's kind of probably no one that has as much pedigree and experience as them. And it's like these guys are just pure winners. If you're going to verse them in the playoffs, this is a team that you don't want to verse. And especially when you have someone like a Steph Curry where they can just go unconscious and just make every single shot and they're unguardable. Like this is the team that you don't want to face. So easy contenders. What do you think?
I agree. Very easy to say that these first two teams are contenders. They've done it before, so like you said, like you mentioned, the experience thing, they check that off. They have one of the best players, arguably the best player in the league. They're rounding into shape. They're bringing back Weissman soon, which is going to be more ammunition. They're going to bring back Drummond at some point too. So, you look at that team, you look at where they are. They have been losing a few games lately, but still, they've been losing a few games lately, and they're still at the second seed in the West. So it just goes to show how talented this team is, and reason why they are a contender.
Yeah, and then especially too, like thinking about them going for it. Like you talked about Wiseman coming back. They have a lot of really good rookies. Like they just drafted two top 10 guys this last draft of like Kaminga and Moody. Like man, this team is a scary team for this year and even going forward.
Agreed. So our third team on the list will be the Memphis Grizzlies, sitting at a 42-20 lead. I mean record. They are 8 games back from the Suns. And what do you think, Brian? Are they a pretender or a contender this season?
So the Grizzlies, they I don't think anyone really saw them coming this season. And if you asked me in the beginning of the season if we did this whole pretenders and contenders exercise, like I would have said pretender. But now I'm saying the Memphis Grizzlies, the way they've played this year, I think they are contenders. I mentioned with Golden State, like I think that's a team that, of course, any team doesn't want to see in a playoff series. I think as well, any team does not want to see the Memphis Grizzlies, and they don't want to see John Morant. They don't want to see all those guys. They play fantastic basketball. Their defense is great. So many of their guys are like really coming up big this year, especially with someone like Desmond Bain. Man, the Memphis Grizzlies, they are just so scary right now. Easy in my mind, contenders. What do you think?
I agree. They're they're a contender for me as well. Definitely a surprise for where
Yeah,
they are that they're this good at this point. They just have an arsenal of good young talent. You mentioned Baines, but you can't leave out the Dylan Brooks. You can't leave out Brandon Clark. You can't leave out John Moran.
yeah,
Can't leave out Jaron Jackson, how he's been playing. Everyone is rounding up into the role that they need to be on this team, and they look so good because of it.
yeah,
I wouldn't say team construction wise, but I would say hype wise, it's similar to OKC in my mind. Is They are a young team that doesn't know better than just to win, right? But even though there's no real growing pains, they're the third team out west right now, and luckily they have someone that knows of success with the OKC, Steven Adams on their team.
yeah.
So that's a veteran presence that's definitely helping out the organization and helping shore up these young guys that they have on their team.
The one thing to keep an eye out for Memphis, because we keep talking about, like, yeah, they're so young, which also means they don't really have a ton of playoff experience. And so that's the one thing to keep an eye on of like, I think they definitely have the potential to beat like a Golden State. Uh, but like that's where it is of like likely that's where it's really tough because that experience is going to come on pretty strong. But I do think they have the potential, so that's why I think Memphis has to be contenders.
And I'll add to that too. I think that this is why I believe in the play-in now. Is the play-in was a good thing for teams like the Warriors and the Grizzlies. In this case, is like to have a little bit added fight that they had last year,
Hmm.
or even the year before that. The Grizzlies have been in contention for a playoff spot these last 2 years. And those games, I think, is the experience
That's true.
that they needed because now they know what a nail biter game feels like, right?
Hmm.
And I think that helped grew them a lot. Granted, I don't does it hold up in the series? We won't know until
Yeah,
we see that, right? But as of right now, like I like that they've taken pressure before they've won and they've lost,
yeah,
but they've won against the team that's the second seed in the West last year. Obviously different team, but still, any team that has Steph Curry on it is scary.
yeah. Nah, that's definitely. I like that you brought that up about like they do kind of they know these like make it or break it kind of games, and they've played in those high stakes like you elimination games. So that does count for something. We'll see how much it does count for going forward, though.
Agreed. All right, so our next team on the list was last year's number one seed out west, the Utah Jazz. They're sitting at 37-22. They're about 11, they are 11 and a half games back from the Suns. Are they a pretender or a contender for you, Brian?
So
This feels like it's going to be interesting.
yeah, this one. So I think I've been pretty consistent this whole time. Of like, I've been extremely high on the Jazz. Most people, no one talks about the Jazz. Everyone's so low on them. I think a big reason too of like they get a lot of disrespect is just because ESPN doesn't talk about the Utah Jazz. They don't talk about any of these guys. And like you said, last year they were the first seed. Like, this is a very good team. But but I'm gonna have to throw them in the pretenders list, sadly, because we're seeing so much, like, we're hearing now so much turmoil. And now these are rumors, like turmoil about tension in the locker room, especially with Donovan Mitchell. And like, we're hearing like I said, a lot of rumors, and you can't take it as fact, but a lot of times when there's smoke there's fire. And there has to be some sort of truth, I believe, in these kind of turmoils, especially like we've been hearing it over the years of like the relationship between Donovan Mitchell, Rudy Gobert, and all this stuff. And like, there's definitely some sort of tension there. They just lost Joe Ingles for the season. They traded him away too. Like, this team, as good as they are, they're definitely a regression from last season. They're not the same team that they were last season. And we saw that team last season wasn't good enough. So they didn't get any better. A lot of their players actually got worse, maybe a little bit, nothing crazy. So when you see everyone else, especially Phoenix, when they've gotten so much better than last year as well, and like kept up that consistency, Golden State's getting better and all these other teams getting better, like, Utah is the one team that's really kind of taken a step back. So I can't, in good faith, put them in a contenders list. Now, are they an easy out? Not at all. Not at all. Still, like, Donovan Mitchell is fantastic. But we've also seen, too, with like Rudy Gobert in the playoffs, at some point they kind of are able to exploit him and he kind of becomes a little bit unplayable. So I'm interested to see if this happens again in this playoff series. Uh, but yeah, what do you think? Do you have them, the Utah Jazz, as pretenders or contenders?
I think we're just going to agree all day long because, um, yeah, I have them on the pretender side of things. It's going back to what you were saying. It stems pre-COVID. Some of the issues that they've had. They were lucky to have that one seed last year to kind of, put up a gauze that there wasn't any issues
Yeah.
with the team or with the locker room. And, they did really well. I can't blame them for that. Like, they
Yeah.
really did play very well. But, as soon as you start losing again, and funny to say they're losing, they're 15 games over 500.
Exactly.
Um, but when it's not as you expected what it would be, that's when you start hearing all of the reports start coming out and flooding the rumor mills with information, right? And that's what it feels like right now. I don't think that's good for a locker room. First, I don't think that's let alone it's not good for a locker room that's looking to win a championship. So there's that, and then yeah, they remain very stagnant. If you look at the first three teams that we talked about,
Yeah.
um, even if there was, even if it was minute changes, there was changes that was made on these teams to get a little bit better to fit their team's fit. But Jazz stayed pat, and I think it's hard because where they are, there's not really a lot of decisions to make it a little bit better
Yeah.
because it is a pretty flushed out team, but it's just not good enough, like you mentioned. So that's why I have them on pretender side as well.
Yeah, I think this is probably one that it's probably one of the more spicier ones as well. We'll get more going forward, but yeah, I think I'm happy we at least we agree on this one.
Exactly, exactly. So the next team on our list is the Dallas Mavericks. After starting the season off really slow, they got pretty hot heading into November, December, and even January. Then they're starting to cool down a little bit, but they are now seated in the fifth spot out west with a record of 35 and 25, 14 games back from the Phoenix Suns. Brian, is the Dallas Mavericks a pretender or contender?
This one is kind of interesting to me. So one, we see what Luca can do in these games. Luca is next level. Like this guy is generational talent. Um, we've seen him do it overseas. We've seen him do it in clutch moments in games, in playoffs in the past. You kind of the Luca. I was gonna say like the Mavs are scary in the playoffs, but no, Luca is scary in the playoffs, not the Mavs. And so this is where it kind of sways me to like basketball is a team sport, even though we all know, stars. You can't win without stars, but I just don't think Dallas has enough. So I'm gonna have to put them on the pretenders list. Um, but they do kind of have some pretty cool bright spots, especially with like Jalen Brunson. I'm interested to see what happens with him during this offseason, whether they resign him or not. I mean, Jalen Brunson's having a career year. Like, there's no way they could have traded him during this trade deadline because he is just too valuable for this team. He's playing fantastic. You just traded Porzingis. I'm interested to see more how this plays out of like Spencer Dinwiddie on the team. So like, can you call that a little bit of regression there because now your power forward spot isn't as strong as it was, even though Porzingis, we can give him a lot of we can be a little harsh on about him at times, but like still at the end of the day, the guy's a good player. He's a good player. So losing him, trading him away, that's it's just like the Mavs, they need more pieces. They need more pieces. But how did they get these pieces? They have some pretty bad contracts and like Tim Hardaway Jr. and these guys are just not needle maker or they don't move the needle, in my opinion. What do you think, Jeff?
Yeah, so the a lot of the reasons why I think they haven't seen our breakthrough to have that phenomenal series. I mean, a phenomenal playoff run recently is because they've been faced with a brick wall of the Clippers the last couple of years, right? And that's made it very hard for them to do what they need to do to make it to that next round, right? Um, you're right. The lineup, in my mind, is not amazing how it's currently constructed. Luca is Luca, but everyone else is kind of, you're assessing and you're wondering what's really there. But I'm gonna have to differ with you here,
Oh,
and
word.
it's surely on the backs of Luca, like you mentioned. Sorry about that. We had a little technical difficulty right there. But back on what I was saying. Um, yeah, I put the contender status on them surely because of Luca's greatness. And currently, when you look at who they would potentially be playing, um, yes, the mismatch. The Jazz is who they would first start off with, and I think that's a very winnable series for them. I think they need to exercise that demon with not being able to make it past the first round since 2011, since they won the championship. So there's that first, and once that happens, I think the floodgates open with the type of player that Luca is. If Bertans can resemble somewhat of what he was when he was a Spur, and just simply just be a guy that can spread the floor Um, it's a good addition by subtraction situation. Obviously, the superior player is Porzingis. I'm not going to ever say that it's Bertans, right?
Yeah.
But in this case, due to injury, consistently being injured, consistently being a liability in that sense because of his injuries, um, I think that this right here has a better opportunity of winning and sustaining longer in a playoff run than with having Porzingis on the team because literally, if Bertans literally could consistently give you at least about 4 or 5 rebounds a game, and
Mhm.
that's up to close to his averages. Can give you about 2 threes a game, and actually play some defense. I think they could beat the Jazz. They could easily beat the Jazz. But then they would have to play a juggernaut in the Suns, right? Who knows what Chris Paul comes back looking like?
Yeah.
And this is also keeping in mind that I did say that they're a contender, but at the same time, just because you contender does not mean you can't be beat. So I could see in a world where the Mavs could go on a run and make it all the way to the Western Conference Finals, with their team currently just because of Porzingis. And it's similar to around the time LeBron took that jump, and his team was not a number one seed that year in '07. So I
Mhm.
see similar traits about that season with this team. And I think this could be that very well be that one season that gives him that confidence to get to that level. And then you see the floodgates just open. They'll consistently be one of the top 3 teams in out west at that point.
This is an interesting take. It's an interesting take. I mean, so like, can they beat the Jazz? It's possible. I think the Bertans thing, like you're saying, it definitely is a possibility that he can come back to his old form. I mean, he was amazing. He was he deserved his contract when he got it. It's just that after he got that contract, he's been pretty terrible. Um, but he is playing with Luca, who's one of the most gifted passers in the league, so he should get better looks. So, I like it. I just kind of think, like, you think about those playoff series that the Mavericks had with like the Clippers and all that. Porzingis was pretty big in those, and it's like, Bertans can help, but like I don't think he necessarily is gonna um he could replace like Porzingis there. Jalen Brunson is better this year, but still, like, this is where like it's kind of tough. Where I feel like we put some disrespect on the Utah Jazz, even though like they're a very good team. So we'll have to. I think this is something we'll have to see. I don't think it's a bad take, of course, because like I could see it. I could see a world where it happens. I could definitely see a world where it happens. I just don't. I personally don't have enough confidence to say that the Dallas Mavericks are contenders as at the moment.
And granted, I will say it's not like there's a world where they are pretenders,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
it's the respect for Luca that gives me the idea that
that's
they
true.
can be a contender. And I think about it, and I think about how eerily similar the start of his playoff career
Hmm.
is starting to look like LeBron's. The only difference is LeBron won those first round matchups when he was playing against the Wizards and having a feud with Gilbert Arenas in that time, right?
Hmm.
But after like that third playoff, it just like clicked for him. In that second round, he was playing a team that he wasn't supposed to beat, and he wound up beating them. And that team happened to be the New Jersey Nets. But then he went up against a juggernaut of a team at that point, the Detroit Pistons, and he was able to win that series as well. And the construction of that team is so similar to what the Dallas Mavericks are currently, in my mind. So the team that I compare those teams to is obviously they would have to go past the Warriors if they ever want to go to the finals, right?
Yeah.
So that's the juggernaut. The team that should beat them is the Suns. That could very well be the case, and then Jazz, another tough out for that first round, just like the Wizards were for LeBron all those years, even though he was able to win them, So
Yeah.
we'll see. We'll see. It definitely is going to be one of the biggest takes on the West for me this year.
Yeah. I think what's kind of interesting too of like we kind of have to think about the Mavericks are generally better than their record a lot of the times because Luca is a slow starter. We've talked about this before. I think the Low podcast has talked about this before of like Luca generally comes into the season out of shape and he uses the season like similar to James Harden to get into shape. And when you do that, the Mavericks start off really slow. And then, as 20 games in, now they're starting to pick it back up. So you got to think about it. They're kind of better than those first 20 or so games that they lose a lot of them just because, Luka's not in perfect shape. So I actually, you're kind of swaying me a little bit now that I'm thinking more about it. I'm like, maybe they are a little bit better than the Jazz. We'll see. We'll see. We'll see.
We will see. We will see. And now that leads us into our sixth seed. Same record actually as the Mavericks right now. I guess the Mavericks hold the tiebreaker, but they're on a 5-game winning streak. Actually, the Denver Nuggets hailing our reigning MVP Jokic with a record of 35-25 and also 14 games back of the Phoenix Suns. Brian, are they a pretender or contender to you?
So this one comes with a little bit of a caveat of like, so to me, the Denver Nuggets, if they get Murray back, if they even just get Murray back for the playoffs, do you know if they get Murray back for the playoffs or no? Like as of now,
It's
'cause
so it's
I think it's
so
up in the air.
murky. There's
Yeah,
really not a lot of information out
yeah,
about when he's coming back, but I think it's abnormal in the day and age of sort of signs that we have. Typically, someone comes back from an ACL already, and I think he got injured last June.
yeah.
I believe it was last June. But yeah, so to see him out this long kind of it gets me kind of worried that he might not come back this season. But no real progress based off of that. And then yeah, based off
So
of it was last April. It was last April. I
yeah,
just did the
yeah.
research.
I'm trying to look, and as a couple of days ago, there was they asked Nuggets boss Tim Connolly about the possibility of Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr. coming back this season. And the quote was, "It's up to them. We're going to clear them at some point in the not too distant future. Then they have to determine when and if they're ready." So this comes back to my point. If even one of those two guys are in, especially Jamal Murray, to me, they're a contender. I just kind of similar to like the Lucas situation. I think that Jokic is just that guy. He is so hard to stop. He is so impactful for his team. Their team is playing really well. Like Will Barton's he's had a couple like a little bit of down years in the past. He's picked it up this year. Man, the Denver Nuggets, I feel like are because think about it. Look where they are right now with two of their main guys out. Like two giant players. Right now they're tied with the Dallas Mavericks in record. Like if they just get some of these guys back, like man, that team is so good. I can see that team beating anyone. So that's why I have to put them as contenders. What do you think?
No, I agree 100% with that. it's so you brought up Will Byrne. Actually, I was watching the game yesterday. They were playing the Kings, and he iced the game. So like Will Barton has been playing pretty well lately, gotten back to playing a little bit better. He did started the season off a little slow, but a lot of players on the
Yeah.
Nuggets did start the season pretty slow. They didn't look as good, but they're rounding back into shape. Um, Jokic is Jokic. That's never going to change. But Jamal Murray changes the game
Yep.
completely if he's there. It would lead to, if let's say they slide into that fifth seed, it leads to another classic series again with the Jazz and the Nuggets, like we saw in the bubble, with both Jamal and Donovan just going off. And I thoroughly enjoyed that series. I'm sure the NBA would thoroughly enjoy seeing that again. But yeah, if they could get one or both back by some time at the end of the season, look out. It is a
Yeah.
look out.
It's especially with like Jokic too. Since like we always talk about like centers not really important, but there's really two guys that are just so impactful. Joel Embiid and Jokic. And a lot of teams don't have a center or even a player that can defend these guys. So that's where it's like it's so scary where if Jokic just had a little more backup, which the person's on his team but just injured, if he just has that backup, it's kind of impossible to stop Jokic. Like that guy is so good. Oh man, yeah, watch out. You said it well. Watch out.
All right, so that leads us to our seventh seed is the Timberwolves. So this was one of my dark horse playoff teams when the season started, but after a good start to the season, they had a pretty underwhelming. They had underwhelming parts of the season, so they're just an okay team right now with a record of 32-29. And they are about 17 and a half games back of the Suns. Ryan, are they pretenders or contenders?
I think you kind of summed it up pretty well when you're doing your the breakdown of the Minnesota Timberwolves of like they're your dark horse team. And dark horse team is like or a dark horse team for the playoffs, and that's like to make the playoffs, not to win the championship. So like that's where it makes it kind of easy of like they actually been playing better than I even expected. And like it helps when you have teams like the Lakers and Portland playing even worse than kind of expected. So you kind of squeeze up in there, but it's just not time. It's just not time. A lot of all these guys. How old is Karl Anthony Towns? Um,
I believe he's 26 or 25.
he is. I
I think
thought,
D'Lo's 26. He's 25.
yeah, he's 26. So,
Okay.
so yeah, like all their guys, they're all so young. If they can get some more playoff experience and they come in, like I like that. Anthony Edwards is playing fantastic this season. Like they have more time. Like this is a good foundation, a very good foundation. Just give these guys a little more time. Pair them up with some veteran help at the when they're ready to actually contend. But that's the thing; they're just not ready to contend right now. That's where it's at. What do you think?
Uh, I don't even think I need to add more
Yeah.
to that. I agree 100%. Is that they're just not there yet. There's a reason why they're at where they're at right now. They need to find more consistent pieces for this roster, and players that galvanize the rest of the players. I've seen D'Lo be a little bit of a leader at times, but I don't think he's best leader you could have. So if you could get someone in there, because I don't think Patty Mills really, Patty Mills, Pat Beverly is
Yeah.
that type of leader. He definitely is defensively stout, but it doesn't. truly resonate into him being a leader. He could be a leader of the defense, but you need a more veteran presence on that team just to even out all of the talent and help them shore up the ships.
I like it. I like it. Well said. Well said.
All right. And then our last team on this list is the Los Angeles Clippers. Without both of their superstars for the foreseeable future, no real clear idea on whether or not they're going to be back this season. They are at 500, 31 and 31, and they are 19 games back of the Suns. Brian, are they pretenders or contenders?
So, um, it's kind of funny of like 19 games back from the Suns, like sounds pretty terrible. But it's really mainly like the Suns are just that good. Like they're just that much better because like this also because look at it what the Clippers are 31 and 31 and the Nets are I guess the closest I can really see is 30 and 31 with the Charlotte Hornets. I'm gonna say. So the Clippers are 19 games back and the Hornets are 10 games back from the first seed. So like it sounds a lot worse, but it's really not too bad. The Clippers, like you mentioned, main two guys out. It's I feel like without those two guys, like this is just an easy pretender. I think the Clippers even know this. Like they're not gonna. I actually like the trades that they made. The Robert Covington and Norm Powell trade, fantastic. We talked about it before too. When Kawhi and Paul George come back, that's gonna look fantastic. It's just without Kawhi and Paul George, this team isn't anything special or anything too crazy. And I was looking Kawhi, like when can Kawhi return? And it's the only thing I can really find is just that there's been reports of him saying like I want to come back before the end of the season. And then just as of like last week, he was talking to somebody during the All-Star weekend, and he was just said like the quote is, "Yeah, I feel a lot better. I'm trying to get back out there, man." Like so it's really doesn't really give us too much substance. I think this one is just kind of like the pretenders without these two guys. If they have those two guys, then it's like, oh man, now the West is even that much more scarier. What do you
Yeah.
think?
So, like you said, to hit them with the label of pretender automatically,
Yeah.
just because where they are right now. But caveat, like you said,
hmm
is that if you're able to get even just one,
Even one.
I'm putting them up as a contender
Yeah.
because the way how they're able to play, the way they're able to do what they have to do on the court and lead these teams, I've seen both of them do it by themselves. They're definitely going to go for it and go right, and they wouldn't be scared of the Suns going at the Sun. You know, it
hmm
would be a little bit of revenge after last season too with the Western Conference Finals losing Kawhi, so it would work for this team.
Yeah. Like it's kind of crazy you think about it like you're saying like if they even get one of those guys, like that is a kind of a contender right there. Like especially with those two trades of getting Norm Powell and Covington, like that is that's pretty good. It's pretty good. It's pretty scary. It is pretty scary. Oh man. Oh man, the Clippers. Do you want to touch on the Lakers, even though they are outside of that top eight that we do, just because the Lakers are so big? Well, okay, we don't have to. I mean,
So,
we'll both say yeah, the pretenders.
yeah, you know, Stephen A. Smith said the other day that their ceiling is a playoff berth and a first round exit. I agree.
Yeah, yeah.
That's about it. That's all I
It's
got to say about them.
it's crazy with like a LeBron on your team that that's kind of the fate of the team right now. Especially like that's the thing, big names, huge names on the team. You think about, I mean, Carmelo Anthony's always kind of been a first round exit guy, but but like you have like Westbrook Anthony Davis and all that. Like,
It's
sad.
been some years since Westbrook's made it past the
I know.
first round as well.
You're not wrong.
So, and he's
Exactly.
been on ensembles of big teams, super teams the
Yeah,
last couple years. So
it's true.
I don't know if that's more telling about him or if it's just he's just unlucky, you know.
Yeah, unlucky guy. Unlucky guy. So you want to move on to our next topic?
Yeah, so that is a perfect segue for us, not the Lakers, but I mean us doing the first 18. It's a good segue for our next topic into the biggest threat out west. Brian, who do you think is the biggest threat out west?
So when we're kind of doing the reviews of these teams, like I didn't really want to go too deep into them at the moment. I don't know if anyone would notice, just because of like I knew I was going to talk about them as my biggest threat, and that's the Memphis Grizzlies. The Memphis Grizzlies are so scary, man. John Morant, that guy, something special right now. The Memphis Grizzlies are the fifth best offense in the league, the ninth best defense in the league. They are just something else. There was a quote of like, what was it last night, of Anthony Edwards was just like, I want to beat the Grizzlies. Like that's like my goal. That's my mission. Like I want to beat them. Like they have the little rivalry. Like everyone wants to beat the Grizzlies. No one saw them coming in. They are the third seed right now. We talked about they're over teams like the Utah Jazz, the Dallas Mavericks, the Denver Nuggets. Like no one saw the Memphis Grizzlies becoming this good. They are 2 games back from the Warriors. Man, no one saw this coming. This team is so good, so scary. It's it's crazy. It's crazy. What are you thinking? Who's your person, or who's your team?
Yeah, so like I mentioned earlier, is that they do rival what the OKC, the infancy of the OKC team look like to me. Like they have that type of talent around them, or like promising young talent for you to consider them like that. Um, I don't disagree with this at all. They really do pose a real fork in the road for all those teams that thought they were just going to be shoe-ins for the finals. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking about the Suns, and I'm thinking about the Warriors. They definitely are. If you're a betting man, you might want to throw some money on them
Yeah.
because they look like they could withstand some stuff in the playoffs. And like I said earlier too, is that I think that they developed that um those calluses, I would put it as, they've developed them from those series, those playing series that they were able to play in these
Mm-hmm.
last couple of years, to give them a sniff or enough of a taste of a playoff atmosphere so that they have an idea of what it means when it's all on the line, like what we had to do, what we had to give up, how we had to be selfless. And I think that's where it all comes down to, is that they remain selfless about their pursuit of being a good team. Like you don't hear anything about Jaren Jackson being upset that Ja became the star. You don't hear anything about Bane is emerging and he
Mm-hmm.
wants to have more shots. Like everyone remains so selfless on that team, and they're all getting better at, as the days pass. So I do agree that's a pretty good team to have a threat as a threat. But
We
for me,
Yeah. I was gonna say of like we even saw like you mentioned all these guys in the team. We even saw how they looked without John Morant, and they also still looked fantastic. So like with John Morant, oh man, the Memphis Grizzlies too nice, too nice.
they put up 70 on the team without John Morant. And we actually had conversations earlier in the season if like they were better off without him. So that's the craziest part,
Yeah.
that people were actually talking about that. But for me, I think of a threat. Like I always have to when we think of threats, it's like something that's unforeseen.
Yep.
It's like when you watch Godzilla movies, you know Godzilla's coming, but they still make it seem like it's something abnormal. They
Mhm.
didn't have enough research into this. They weren't foreseeing this, and now here's Godzilla. For me, Godzilla is Luka Doncic. And that's why I believe that they're the biggest threat to remapping everything for the West. Because if this guy just gets enough confidence to believe that he could do it. I really do think that he's the type of player that could do it with just I'm not saying he's not a confident player. I'm just saying that if he gets the momentum and the ball rolling in the playoffs, like I said, if they could get past that first round and exercise that demon, it makes it a lot easier. I think he plays a lot more loose, a lot more fluid. He's getting his guys, finding their spots. Brunson's going to be Brunson. Dinwiddie coming off the bench. You have, their front court isn't amazing, but they have. You just said his name. I forgot his name. He's the wing from the
Uh,
Knicks. He came from the Knicks. I
Tim
forgot
Hardaway
his name.
Jr.
Tim Hardaway Jr. They
Mhm.
still have Tim Hardaway Jr. And Tim Hardaway Jr. actually played pretty well in the
Yeah.
playoffs.
Mhm.
So, I think that you give him enough, or they give him enough of themselves to Luca in this playoffs, you could very well see him go on a run and really pose a big threat to everything that we thought was going to be of the West.
Yeah. It's it's funny. I just want to touch on like the Tim Hardaway Jr. stuff of like like you said, we saw in the playoffs. He is the type of player that like he can go like 7 of 9 from shooting a three one game, but the next game he can go like 1 of 10 and like just just be so bad. So he's a streaky guy, but hey, if he can show up in the playoffs and help them out as well, like that's what I say. Like I can definitely see the world where the Mavericks do upset a couple teams just because, like you said, Luka Doncic, man, that guy is next level. He kind of is a different player when it comes to the playoffs and like even when they're versing against like the Clippers, when you saw like you have like Kawhi, Paul George, and you have Luka there, like to me, Luka looked like the best player on the floor. Like that guy, it was just so good, unstoppable. It's it's hard to bet against him. So I do like it. You swayed me. You swayed me again, Jeff. You've done it.
All right. I guess that leads us into our next topic. And last last Friday, not last Friday, the past Friday. Well, it was
Mhm.
last Friday, but the past Friday, the Sixers were able to debut their new. I guess you were gonna call it the Big Two or the duo or whatever nickname they come up with. I saw some stuff about the Beard, so I'm gonna go with that for now. And they looked really good against the Timberwolves. Joel Embiid was quoted saying he was just so shocked about how open he was playing with James Harden. He was just so happy to have a teammate like that. And James Harden in the press conference goes on to say that he's the best type of teammate to have. Press conference. We'll just leave it as that. But they both look happy with each other. They both look like they're poised to do something. But that now stems into the next questions that we're having is this has inevitably opened up the title window for Philly. And in some people's eyes, some people will
Mhm.
say that Philly may be the favorite to win out east. Um, how long do you think this window is open? how long do you think this team is going to remain consistent and be in that contention?
So it's pretty funny, like you're saying. They had a really good game, and now they're like kissing each other's butts and all that. And like what this is it's to me it's like the honeymoon phase. Right now, they got what they want. They got each other, and now they play their first game. It looked really really good against the Timberwolves, which we mentioned, not contenders, but good team. Um, so it is interesting to see like this little honeymoon phase, and they're all going back and forth. But let's see how they hold up when there's actually um some turmoil, when things get a little bumpy, when they start losing some games. Like that's where I really want to see how they look and how they play together. Your question: how long is this window? How does this team play consistently? I think at the end of the day, what it really comes down to, and I've been kind of consistent on this, is Joel Embiid's health. If he's healthy, now I kind of agree with everyone else. I don't know if they're the favorites, but they're definitely one of the favorites. They are, when a healthy Embiid and a healthy Harden, very scary. But we kind of said this with like the Nets of a healthy Kevin Durant, a healthy Kyrie, a healthy Harden. Those three guys, unstoppable. And we all knew that, but we only saw it for 16 games. So in actual practice with Embiid, who we know who has an injury history, that's where it kind of is a little scary to me. Because as soon as he loses one of them, or even if James Harden goes down, who's been having like the hamstring problems and all that, like if he goes down, now they're out of the playoff contention in my mind. So that's how I kind of think of it. It's all based on Embiid. What do you think?
So I pulled up contracts and thought of it like that. So obviously, Joel Embiid is going to be the guy that signed out the longest, right?
Yep.
So his contract goes out till 2027. My thought is the window is as long as James Harden's contract can be honored, right?
Okay.
You only have 2 years. You have a year and a half. You have
Mhm.
less than a year and a half. Put it as that. You have a less than a year and a half to prove to James Harden that this team works,
Yep.
right? And you have a lot of money tied to someone in Tobias Harris that, to be honest, he's a good player, but
Overpaid.
he has a lot of money, yeah,
Yeah.
tied to him. And he's signed till the 2024 season. And let's say this team wants to improve. How do you do that when you have to pick up, once Harden gets that supermax, a $60 million potentially a year annually
Mhm.
contract? How do you do that? That first year, you're looking around $180, 180 million, 180. If it was $180, they would have been happy.
Yeah.
but you have around nearly not 180. I exaggerated it, but you have around doing the numbers in my mind, right? $140 million tied up to three guys. And yes, you have a few guys that would remain on their rookie contracts, but Dybul next year needs to get paid. Do you let him walk? Um, Tyrese Maxey within that frame of time where Tobias's contract comes up, Joel Embiid is signed up, and then you have to re-sign James Harden. Tyrese Maxey is in his player option,
Yep.
or team up. Yeah, I believe it's player option. Um, no, because I think he's on rookie contract, so I
Yeah,
think it
he's
would
right.
be the team.
It's a team. Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
Because he's a
well,
first round
so he
pick.
has, yeah, so that last year though, in 2023, 2024, is his last year on his contract, so he wouldn't have to honor
Yep.
anything at that point. So yeah, he makes the decision if he wants to get money or if he wants to stay with the Sixers, right?
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, I just don't generally see where you bring in other contracts if you're not married to the thought that you're going to be well over the luxury tax. And that literally it's everyone on the team. It's you see that is there's only about four, and two are contingent with options, but there's about four guys that are signed long term past 2023. Actually, five. I'm not going to count Charles Bassey.
Yeah,
That was you know,
yeah.
but there's five guys right now that you could say that about, and we'll see what that is, what that means for them, and that's why I think the window's only 2 years. You got to prove it now.
I think, I mean, no, you're definitely right there about the window is that 2 year period, mainly because, like, just to add on what you're talking to, I think the biggest part of, especially when you have good rookies, so you have like, or good young players on rookie contracts, so like Thibault, like Maxi, is you want to get the most out of those years while they're still on their rookie contract. Because once they're extended and once they are making 10, 15, $20 million a year, you kind of can't improve your team as much anymore. So really, these next 2 years are is the only really the only chances that they have to um like improve their team before being completely like capped out. The thing that kills them is that Tobias Harris contract. That thing is so bad. They're, as you saw, they're trying to get rid of it with Ben Simmons. Just it's kind of impossible when you package $60 million or whatever it is together. Like these teams just don't have the cap space for it. Um, so that's where that's the struggling part there. Um, I mean, at the end of the day, like the team really is mainly Harden and Embiid. So as long as you have those two guys, like your window's always open. You know, there's always some finessing you can do and all that stuff. But the real like chances that they have to be at their best is like you said, these next 2 years. So that's where it's interesting.
You know what? You know what's a stat that just like kind of now seeing it is like making me think about this window and think about honestly something I never thought about in my
So
life, but till this day is Joel Embiid just being in the league. You wouldn't think that Joel Embiid is only 2 years younger than Kyrie Irving. He is 27 years old. Kyrie is 29.
yeah,
Tobias Harris is 29, which means that they're all getting a little bit older.
yep,
And they are getting to that point where when we get to that end of that Harden contract, Harden will be 34, known as a guy that does not prioritize strength and conditioning and, just being in the gym besides for basketball purposes.
yep,
You know, what does 34-year-old Harden look like? And are you ready to pay 34-year-old Harden? You've seen teams take gambles with that, like the Suns,
yep,
and look at how good they are. But Harden and Chris Paul, I think at that age, are going to be two starkly different type of players. But it's all hyperbole until we see it, right?
yep.
So but 34-year-old Harden, if he continues the way he continues, and I don't know if you've seen that video of him talking about not missing out a chance to see little baby and
Oh
Meek
yeah,
Mill making a song. Like if he continues with
yeah,
stuff like that, I don't know how a guy stays healthy playing basketball at 34, worried about stuff like that and getting submerged and stuff like that. Reason why you see guys like LeBron last this long is because he took a prioritization to his
yep,
body. So that's
yeah.
another question to ask about this.
Well, yeah, LeBron isn't the norm, and that's where kind of we all know LeBron is so like outside of the norm, but we kind of try to like look at it. Oh, he's how old is he now? 37. I don't, I don't know. I should
37, I think. Yeah.
37. Like doing the stuff he does, like most guys really don't produce that well. Now, James Harden's game doesn't really necessarily need him to be like super athletic and all that, but he still needs to be healthy enough. So that's the thing. Do you want to pay someone that's going to start regressing and all that stuff? And B, like you mentioned, that's fine. I think instead of like Embiid being like 27, kind of like a shocker, is more than that Kyrie's like 29. Because like, especially with Kyrie with like the beard, he grew out his hair and everything. Like, especially with the Uncle Drew stuff, like I don't know. Most people just kind of think of him as an older person, but it's so crazy. He's only 29.
Exactly. It just feels like he's been in the league so long.
Yeah, exactly. He
And
has been in the league for a long time.
it's the moments we've seen from him.
Yeah,
I think that makes it feel like he's been here so long. So
exactly. Especially he has a pretty like long career of like playing for all these different teams for a decent amount of time and all that stuff. So that's Kyrie something else. How long has he played? He's played 11 seasons in the NBA. That's pretty crazy.
well, that leads into you said regression, so I think that's a
Uh-huh.
perfect segue into our next topic. Is that Kemba Walker? The team have agreed upon sidelining him for the remainder of this season. Ryan, what are your thoughts on that?
So this one's pretty interesting. I really want to talk about this because, well, one, what I found was interesting was from all the reports, like what Woe was just talking about and everything, it's really framed as Kemba Walker was the one who decided to sit out. Like it wasn't the team pushing him away. Like it was Kemba Walker's decision. I wonder. I mean, maybe that's true. Maybe it's not. I don't know. Uh, Something to think about. Just because, like, I mean, I feel like if he decided not to do this, the team was kind of going that route anyway. Of like, he was gonna be benched by the end of the season. Um, but man, Kemba's just been bad. There's kind of no way to sugarcoat it. They have mentioned Tibbs has also come out and said like he's been banged up all season. He hasn't really been playing, but he's been playing injured. So that's a possibility of why we can see him not be as good and why we see him this season. I'm watching every single game myself. He just sits at the 3-point line. And we know Kemba Walker of like he's really at his best when he's attacking the rim. And then all the knee stuff, and he's kind of becoming a better 3-point shooter. But like this season, he's kind of just been like a spot up 3-point shooter. And that's not his game. It's a lot of different things that mix together that makes this whole Kemba situation so bad. Of like him not playing like he always does. Tibbs probably just not using him like he always is. Tibbs is getting a lot of flack right now. We talked about last week of him potentially getting fired. The injury stuff and everything else, and like there was a report that I saw of like in over 1900 minutes this season without Walker on the court this season, more than 2/3 of the total minutes that New York has played. The Knicks are equal to the 12th best net rating in the league. And then when Kemba Walker has played, they've been outscored by 9.1 points per 100 possessions, which is just a little bit better than the 29th ranked team, the Houston Rockets. Like when Kemba's playing, the team is just statistically all season been so much worse. And this is why he was benched earlier this season. And he did deserve the bench. I set up for it when it happened. And then he came back and played good for like 5 games. And then he went back to that old form. It's sad to see a player fall from grace. What do you think, Jeff? I've been rambling.
No, I think another thing that's telling about this whole thing is Kemba decided, and this was the report that came out recently, is that he decided he did not want it to be bought out, which means
Yes.
that, you know, I think it for him, let's think about the PR side of it. That's a good PR for him.
Yeah.
He doesn't give up on a team again. This is his hometown team as well.
Hmm.
He truly wanted it to work. You knew he wanted it to work. He wanted to fit into a role that made it work as well when he realized it wasn't going to be what he thought it was. And he's, done everything with the team to be able to give it his all. But like you said, the from grace has made it so hard for you to accept what he is now because mine is not trained to think about your regressions in that way, right?
Yeah.
So for him, I think this is good for him because it now, like you mentioned too, gives him time to focus on his body, get
Yep.
into the right state that he needs to be, so that by time of the off season and that he's working with the Knicks to facilitate a trade, he potentially could help them with getting a little bit of value back. And I think that's why he did not want it to get bought out, is to help the Knicks out because they helped him out and because it's his own team, you know. And but I will say it's going to be a hard out. It's going to be a hard out to find a suitor that wants to pick him up. What happens? OKC trades for him again, like I I just want to be optimistic and think that there's going to be a team that would want to pick him up, but his game would have to change drastically
Hmm.
for him to be considered. And you know, it's not like he could go and work out for other teams when you're on another team, right?
Hmm.
So none of these teams will truly know until they know like what they're getting as a package. So on one coin, I'm gonna say that kudos to him being the good guy and just saying, I'd rather sit out than, cheat or quit on the team
Yeah.
and be somewhere else. And then on the other coin of the side, it's like, but you don't solve any problems for us in this because what value are we going to get back? Granted, I think the value you probably get back, and it's so sad to say it like this now, is he probably will be picks
Yeah.
is the most you'll get for him, and it might not be even. It won't be a lottery pick, I'll tell you that.
No.
It will be lottery protected if it's in the first round, or it will be a package of second round picks for Kemba Walker at this point.
That's where I'm thinking. No, I don't think there's any chance the team's giving it a first round pick for Kemba at the moment. I think what it would probably be is like 2 second round picks. That's what it would be because I don't think it would be hard to trade him just because of like he will at that point be an expiring contract. So teams love expiring contracts. Makes a lot of it's so flexible. And especially too, he's making $9 million a year. And to have Kemba Walker $9 million a year, if he's takes this time off, he gets in better shape, have him coming off your bench, like that is good value. Kemba Walker as a starter, we might have seen the last days of that, but him coming off the bench, I kind of think about like a situation like with Melo. If that is his progression and he has his career similar to like what Melo is now, that's a good career still. And that's where like I could see like a team would want someone like Kemba coming off the bench, especially the leadership and all that, all the intangibles. So that's where I see it happening. Second round picks, I love something back. I do wonder how much of it is that Kemba didn't want to get bought out, and this is like optics versus like the Knicks just weren't gonna buy him out, and like, and now they just kind of both agreed like, all right, this is how we're gonna frame this. Like, that's what it kind of seems like to me. Because why would you not want to get bought out? And they say you want to help the team, but you're gonna make what, an extra million or two if you get bought out now. You sign with another team, like that I'm sure that sounds nice. Um, but yeah, you mentioned just to finish off of like it's good for Kemba, and it's also actually good for the Knicks because there was so much drama that came into it when the Knicks decided to sit down Kemba Walker. Maybe this is why it's worded this way. There's a lot of drama when the Knicks were like, you know what, Kemba's bench, he doesn't have a spot in this rotation. Versus Kemba decided to shut down for the season. Those are two different things. The way the media handles it is very different. It's good for the Knicks though. Of like I mentioned, they had a log jam. The season's done for them. It's time for the tank. Let's try to get the highest pick they can get. Let's see some young guys that you want to see too. And it kind of opens up the way, gives more minutes. Maybe we see more Cam Reddish, not at point guard, but just gives more. They move Alec Burks to point guard or something like that. I hate that. But overall, it's sad to see. We'll probably see this. That was the last game we saw Kemba Walker playing in a Knicks jersey.
Agreed.
Do you want to move on to our last topic of the day?
Yes, I am ready. So, Zion Williamson. He is. We are. Do you know what date it is, Brian? It is February
27th.
27th. We are 22 episodes in.
Yep.
I believe it was episode 1 or 2. We thought that Zion Williamson would be back in about a week or two, is what David Griffin told us.
Yep.
We are clearly past 1 to 2 weeks since we've seen Zion Williamson. If that's not alarming, just talking about that, everything else that comes after it just makes it so much harder to like just even sit and listen to. Because now you have a team that's frustrated with him.
Mm-hmm.
You have a player that's frustrated. You have a city that is frustrated now. Have you seen the video of the float that they had in Mardi Gras?
I did not.
In New Orleans? Yeah, it implied that Zion's new name is 1 ton. Like, are they put a 1 ton on him? Is what it said. So saw it this morning. I know that's not bolstering any of his feelings about New Orleans. Not only just that, you also have the fact that the optics, man. Like, granted, Jalen Rose talked about this the other day. When you're a young guy, you don't really think about having to hit up every new guy that comes to the team.
Yeah.
But the optics to let it go out are like for CJ to even let it be known that he has not talked to Zion Williamson. It's just so like, who's the PR guy that lets CJ say that? Like,
yeah, CJ is like the president of the Players Association, so like he knows how to talk in front of people and all this stuff. Like,
and maybe that was a ploy. Maybe that was what he wanted to do. Exactly. He knew that Zion wasn't going to talk to him, and that was the best way to get Zion to talk to him.
Maybe CJ's a smart guy, so I wouldn't put it past him, honestly. Like, if you listen to him speak, like, very smart guy. Ah, man, that's so funny you brought up. Like, I really did think it was gonna be a week or two. I did not think we'd go the entire season without seeing Zion, and it's not just. Well, one, they hid the surgery that he had earlier in the season that we didn't know that he had it. It seemed like the Pelicans didn't even know he had a surgery in the offseason. And then when he's about to come back or whatever, they're like, oh, he's still having foot problems and he's going to be out even more. And it's like, it's so scary that Zion, those foot problems for a big man, even though he's 6'6", like, he's a big man, we all know. That's not what you want to see. That is not what you want to see. The man has a history of injury problems. We saw the stuff with even in when he played in Duke with his shoe, and like how explosive this guy could be and how dangerous it could be for him. Of like it's scary, but no, this guy is probably the next one to ask out, the next star to ask out from his team. I'll kick it back to you, Jeff. Where do you think Zion could go and should go?
Before I even
Okay.
say
Yeah.
where I think he should go or he could go, how ludicrous, how asinine, how much of an bad person, I'll put it as, keep it PG, you have to be like to, in your rookie contract, already have the call to say that I need to be out.
Yep.
And I said it early in the season and it's really coming to fruition. It's an Uncle Dennis like situation
Mm-hmm.
brewing here with Zion. And you know, I'm never gonna say anything about the guy's personal family, but like he is allowing people in his family to put out these reports, and like when you look back, like I want him to think about this, like when he looks back in 5, 10 years about those decisions that he made or he possibly is making just for his family because of his family. He'll start to realize those were stuff that were being done in spite of his family, and it was not making the situation better for him and his family. Because now you're going to have a label, and
Mm-hmm.
just like in any other workplace, this stuff moves around. People will always know about this. If Zion thinks that GMs don't talk and they don't
Yep.
know about other players' weaknesses and issues, he's gonna have a rude awakening because they're going to whoever trades for Zion Williamson is going to try to put a muzzle on his family, like
Mm-hmm.
to kind of push him back away from that and allow for them to do what they have to do to stay remain successful, but also not allow for them to botch anything that they're doing. And you know, we've seen in cases where, and that's where I always say that sometimes there is spite or stuff happening in the league because you're not doing it the way that the league wants it to be done, right?
Yep.
And the perfect example is Marvin Bagley and his father always talking out of turn about the Kings. And I think the Kings held out. The Kings knew they had no reason for him, and they held out just because his dad spoke.
Yep.
All once again speculative stuff, but if I'm being a human and thinking like a human, like this is it's not far fetched to think that that's why the Kings
Mm.
did that. And it seems like that's going to be similar with this situation. Ideally, the place that everyone wants him to go, everyone thinks is the best place to go, is going to be the Knicks. I think him pairing him with RJ makes the most sense. But what path do you have to making that trade? What are you willing to risk? And
Mm-hmm.
now it becomes a Thanos moment where you got to give up the Soul Stone, man. Like, what are you giving up to put Zion on your team? And
Yep.
Leon Rose is gonna have to say, "I gave everything," like yes, that's what it looks like it's gonna be, man.
Yeah.
It's they're not gonna make it easy. David Griffin's not gonna make it easy. He already made it hard
Yeah.
once with the Kyrie trade, so
Mm-hmm.
I don't see him being a guy that now is going to not try to get the most aggressive package.
The see, like you mentioned, definitely the Knicks makes sense, but where it doesn't actually make sense is like you mentioned with David Griffin. David Griffin has all the power here. The man is on Zion's on his rookie contract, and when players are on the rookie contract, the team has all the control, literally all the control. They can give him the most money. They can do all this other stuff. The team has everything. Now, Zion is probably going to go to David Griffin and be like, I have these X teams that I would like to go to. Maybe the Knicks are one of them. But he's going to have more than just the Knicks. And then as well, David Griffin doesn't actually have to follow that at all. He can trade him to anywhere that who's going to give him a better package. And just looking at what the Knicks have versus what other teams have, the Knicks are not even going to be close to having the best package. So I don't think that's good. I don't think that's going to happen. It's just that looking around the league, like teams are just waiting every year. We have a new star that's going to want a disgruntled star that's going to want to leave. Zion, we know when healthy, maybe a generational talent. That guy is something else. Problem is, if he's healthy, and it's just like it's to me, it's so scary to try to give up so many assets. Like you said, I gave up everything to give everything to get a guy who missed this entire season that, like you mentioned too, is starting to get a bad reputation of one, the family stuff. JJ Redick was on ESPN, called out Zion for not only just not talking to CJ, which is even like you're saying, fine, whatever. The guy, he wants to leave the team. What it looks like he wants to leave the team. Who cares about that? I don't care. But he's even talked about when he played with Zion. JJ was a teammate of Zion's. He said, like, I can vouch for this. He is a, what was the term?
Detached teammate.
The attached teammate. He's having this reputation now coming out, and JJ is a credible guy. Like, this is where it starts getting a little scary. And I wonder if the teams are going to be like, you know what, let's wait for the next star to ask out versus let's trade everything for Zion. Crazy.
It really does make for you to take a second to think it and reevaluate it because we've said this about a lot of stars too. While we spoke on the podcast, is that the good you gotta assess the good, but you also have to assess the bad. A lot of teams know what's coming, and they do enough research, thorough research, to know what type of player they're getting. In recent years, it was like shocking for me to even know that NBA actually has scouts that are on their team to go see other NBA teams. I thought it was simply just college, right? Or going overseas. But like when they're looking into a player they potentially want to trade for, they go in and they start asking questions and looking into these players. So what's the things that Zion's doing on the bench that makes him a detached player? Because there's been a lot of time he's been on the bench rather than he's been playing. So I have to think that he's assessing JJ Redick is keeping in mind stuff like that too, where he does not remain intact with all the other guys. But it begs the question now, even further, just pulling a little bit further out of the micro about Zion and going a little bit more macro. What is so wrong about New Orleans? I really don't understand why every superstar has to find a way out of New Orleans. And I'm going to go out of my own personal experience. I've been to New Orleans. It's a nice city. Like I could see myself enjoying myself or spending a prolonged amount of time in New Orleans. But for some reason, there's just no set of consistency with stars staying there. At first, I'm thinking maybe it's bad ownership. Ownership has flipped several times since the New Orleans have been Pelicans have been down in New Orleans, right? So that's out of the question. It's just too small of a market. If you go to New Orleans, it's not that small of a market. It really is not that small of a market. It's a bustling city. It's a southern city, but it's a bustling city. You can have fun in New Orleans. It is the food. everyone talks about the food in New
Yeah.
Orleans, so it's great. I just don't know what it is that makes every superstar just want to get out of New Orleans.
It's it has to, like you mentioned, like it has to be the instability of how the team is run. It just kind of has to be. You know, it's kind of funny of like all the times where when the team was becoming the Pelicans and they sold from like they just got new ownership. When they got new ownership, luckily that year they got the number one pick. And then right after they trade Anthony Davis, luckily they got the number one pick. Like it's funny, like stuff like that. But it's really just in my opinion, it's yeah, it has to just be like the people around the team. And even though like, yeah, we got new ownership, but just because you got new ownership doesn't mean like that next ownership is gonna be good. So it just has to be like that. And then like you said, it's not a small market, but like it's New Orleans doesn't get any love. So you see
Yeah.
Zion's a huge name, but like other than Zion, like no one would ever be talking about New Orleans, even if they're winning. It'd be a situation like we see with some of these other smaller market teams uh, when they do well. Crazy. It's crazy to see potentially Zion leave on his rookie contract. No official ask out yet, but it really looks like it's gonna gear up towards that.
It would be unprecedented, and I really hope that David Griffin does not oblige to any of it.
Yeah.
I He has to honor the contract in my mind. You know, I would love to see him on a dynamic team, but
Hmm.
like it opens the floodgates for stuff that the NBA does not have to deal with because what's going to stop the guy 2 years in, 1 year in from saying trade me? And then the draft is completely flawed at that point, which is
Yeah.
already flawed.
Yeah. It definitely is flawed.
Yeah.
Um I mean, yeah, this is just where the league is kind of going right now. Of you're having the number one pick probably going to be asking out before his rookie contract ends. Players with 3 years left on their max contracts asking out. Like, and I mean, look, we saw James Harden just ask out twice in 2 years to move to different teams. Like, uh, and he said like, oh, Philly was always his number one team. All right, you got traded to Brooklyn, which is not a bad situation.
Mhm.
It's
And
yeah,
I want to circle back on that.
yeah,
You know, we gave a lot of flack to guys like Kevin Durant and LeBron James for their decisions, right? But never did one of those guys not honor their contracts. They stayed through something that they signed and
yep,
said that I'm going to be a part of this organization. LeBron James does 1 year and plus one deals, right? Doesn't matter. He honored that contract.
yeah,
But all of these guys we've seen in the recent years that simply just deciding, oh, I don't want to be here no more. I'm out. You know what I mean?
yeah.
It's just not, it's not giving, it's a bad look for the league. It
It
really is
is.
a bad look for the league. And I know for a fact when 2023 rolls around and that CBA agreement is up,
Yep.
there's going to be a lot of contention around that because as an owner, like granted, I'm not a, I'll never be an advocate for the uber rich, but as an owner that has to serve their team or provide the best product for their team. When you sign a guy to a contract, you feel that that person should have an obligation to that contract. I'm not saying that a person has to stay there the rest of their careers like it was back in the 70s,
Hmm.
60s, 80s, even to extent. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying you signed on the dotted line. You agreed upon X amount of years. At least give at least give 60% of that. And I would advocate for something like that.
Yeah.
Like I know that would be harsh, and NBA players probably would not like that. But if you didn't honor 60% of your contract, there is cap penalties on your money that is being rewarded back to the team. Because then the team does not have to deal with you just deciding, somebody
Yeah.
farted on you the wrong way that day. So now you want out of the damn city. So, you know, like I think there has to be some penalties built
Yeah.
around it a little.
Yeah, as we saw even with like Ben Simmons deciding to like, all right, I'm just not going to play for this team anymore. What he had 3 years left in his contract or whatever it is. Like, it's there definitely it's going to be the conversation in the next CBA talk of they have to kind of put a stop to this because it's getting out of hand, especially like when you see a potential first round pick maybe not staying with that team or signing an extension with that team. Like, that's when it starts becoming a problem. Um, I mean, it already is a problem. Everyone talks about it, so but it gets even
Exactly.
worse. And that's all we have for today. Weekly roundup. I'm pushing it off for this week just mainly because of we didn't really have a full week of basketball. It was still the All-Star break. Uh, we just got basketball back this last Thursday. Not a ton of news. The little news that I did see, nothing crazy. So we'll save everything for the next week. This was a lot of fun. Jeff, do you have anything you want to say before we close off?
Nope, not today. I'll
Not
save it
today.
for next week.
Word,
The
word.
MJ episode, number 23.
Number 23. Yo, consistency is key. We're doing it. Everyone, listeners, thank you so much for always listening. Jeff, we had to talk a little bit more about this, but I want to start getting a little more guests on it and on the podcast. Do that again. That was a lot of fun. Listeners,
Yeah,
let
it's
us
been a little
know.
while.
Yeah, let us know if you want to see that as well, and if any of the guests that we had already, if you want to see some repeats there. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. Follow the Twitter. It's on the video. It's on your screen. Check us out. Give us a subscribe and everything. And yeah, this was episode 22.
Got one more thing.
Oh, all right. Go for it.
TikTok coming soon. Coming soon. We'll keep you updated.
Yeah, keep you updated. So yeah, it's very exciting there. Very exciting. All right, episode 22.
Peace.